It's my privilege today to chair this session on disarmament and non-proliferation issues, which I presume includes also arms control. There's a similar lack of disarmament in general and especially in terms of nuclear issues. Our first speaker, we have two very distinguished speakers. Our first is Dr. Rabia Akhtar, who will be speaking on contemporary nuclear disarmament efforts, challenges and prospects of the cycle. And she is a noted nuclear historian and presently head of the Department School of Integrated Social Science at the University of Mahal. She is also the founding director of think tank Center for Strategic Security and Policy Research housed in the University of Lahore. She holds a PhD in Security Studies from Kansas State University. Her research focused on the U.S. non-proliferation policy towards Pakistan under 5 U.S. administrations from Ford to Clinton. She is also a Fulbright alumni. She contributes regularly in national and international dailies on regional politics, foreign policy, non-proliferation, and arms control. She's working on her book manuscript on U.S. non-proliferation policy towards Pakistan, which should come out, inshallah, next year, which we all look forward to hearing. Dr. Rabia Akhtar, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair Ambassador Tariq Usman Heather. I would like to thank the organizers of this conference, Ambassador Ali Sarvanakti, for having me here. Islamabad's weather is a bit better than in Lahore, so I'm glad to be here. My fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I would like to start by making an admission. When I was given the topic for my talk for this conference, I was puzzled for a while. I said to myself, really, disarmament, what challenges, what prospects? Who wants to talk about disarmament unless you are the United Nations? They can't be serious, but they were, so here I am. I'll be brief. I will not present the run-of-the-mill talk on disarmament, the NPT review conferences, the 13 steps towards nuclear disarmament that are still awaiting implementation, and all host of background that I'm sure this audience is well versed with. I'm going to talk about disarmament in a very plain and simple terms. It is a promise enshrined in Article 6 of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which to date has not been fulfilled, period. I'll borrow the term organized hypocrisy from Stephen Krasner, who originally used this term to describe what a sham sovereignty is. I'll apply this to the nuclear non-proliferation regime and say that the international embrace of this promise of nuclear disarmament made by the 5 NPT nuclear weapon states can be characterized as organized hypocrisy, whereby those who made this promise continue to violate the conditions under which the promise is to be fulfilled. This organized hypocrisy is an inherent part of the complex international system, where a state's behavior is inconsistent with the norms and principles it rhetorically endorses. Now, I understand that the international system is unpredictable and complex, and that the rules and norms constantly clash with the state's national interests, making it difficult to be consistent in its behavior. Now, let us talk about this promise of disarmament at another level. IR 101. There is no morality in international relations. All is fair in love and IR. Relations are interest-based, interests change. The promise made today to do something 10 years later will not hold if the circumstances change, which they will. So I don't have a problem with promises made. My problem is that in this case, the hypocrisy is unidirectional. The NPT non-nuclear weapon states upheld their end of the bargain and gave up their right to develop nuclear weapons in the hope that NPT nuclear weapon states will also get rid of theirs, keeping with the good faith, thing which never happened. What have the leading NPT nuclear weapon states done except for writing highly overrated opinion pieces? My reference is to 2007 article by Kissinger, Scholz, Salmon, and William Perry, The Four Horsemen, warning us about the nuclear apocalypse and how we all must work towards the global zero. In 2013, a group of 20 former US civilian and military officials, the group of New Horsemen, wrote an open letter to President Obama, stating their fears that further unilateral reductions in US nuclear arsenal will only create doubt in the mind of US allies about the viability and credibility of US nuclear deterrent. These officials were of the opinion that America's trial of nuclear-armed, land-based and submarine-launched missiles and bomber-delivered nuclear weapons have promoted strategic stability and in turn discouraged proliferation. Steps that raise uncertainty about the viability, reliability, and effectiveness of US deterrent, such as reduction in US nuclear arsenal, will have the opposite effect. So let's move away from that. This is how inconsistencies in behavior, states' behavior, are normalized. These justifications are sold well, and inconsistencies are forgotten. The world is made to understand that US has to take care of its allies, so extended deterrence requires robust nuclear arsenal, that there are new dangers in the world that require modernization of US nuclear arsenal, that there are rocket men out there that have nuclear weapons so that US cannot give up its own even after everyone else has. Deterrence is sold well, and disarmament is pushed further back on the burner of promises unfulfilled. But don't get me wrong, I am a fan of organized hypocrisy, as long as Pakistan gets to benefit from it. I believe there has never been a truer template of realism that existed. Pakistan has stayed out of the NPT, a wise decision, and must continue to stay out. Pakistan should stick to its guns where FMCD negotiations are concerned, and must insist on non-discriminatory, verifiable treaty that covers existing stocks. Pakistan must continue to support approaches of global zero. Pakistan must maintain its moratorium on nuclear testing. I'm glad that Pakistan boycotted the nuclear weapons ban treaty in the UNGA this year, another useless, legally binding instrument to prohibit the signatories from developing, testing, producing, manufacturing, possessing, transferring, stockpiling, hosting, or using nuclear weapons. The US, Britain, and France will release a joint statement after the treaty was adopted stating, "We do not intend to sign, ratify, or ever become a party to it." The three nations explained that a purported ban on nuclear weapons that does not address the security concerns that continue to make nuclear deterrence necessary cannot result in the elimination of a single nuclear weapon and will not enhance any country's security nor international peace and security. This brings me to the last 2 points that I would like to make on what are the challenges and prospects of nuclear disarmament. I believe that nuclear disarmament will remain a promise and not become a reality due to 2 reasons which make disarmament challenging. Number 1, as long as nuclear weapons have a role to play in national security doctrines of countries that possess nuclear weapons, countries will not give up their nuclear weapons. Case in point, North Korea and US treatment of North Korea, which is worrisome for Iran and for all those countries that chose to give up their right to develop nuclear weapons and believes in the promises made and security guarantees extended to them. Number 2, nuclear weapons require modernization, which is another challenge that all nuclear weapon states face today, and by the virtue of which they continue to stay away from their disarmament commitments. Nuclear weapon states argue, and rightly so in my opinion, that warheads and delivery systems require regular maintenance to ensure safety and extend service life, and that they must spend money to maintain and upgrade nuclear weapon system in order to ensure their effectiveness and longevity. They claim that such maintenance does not constitute modernization since they are not producing new warhead designs. While there is much truth in that statement, it brings no comfort to the non-nuclear weapon states, even when they are able to distinguish between development and modernization of nuclear weapons. The 13 practical steps towards nuclear disarmament outlined in the 2000 NPT Review Conference are by far the most comprehensive commitments which the nuclear weapon states have ever made on nuclear disarmament. These embody a clear roadmap which the nuclear weapon states need to take to fulfill their mandate under the Article 6 of the NPT. They include measures such as bilateral arms control between US and Russia, entry into force of comprehensive test ban treaty and fissile material ban treaty, de-alerting of nuclear weapons, no first use commitments and negative security assurances by nuclear weapon states, irreversible disarmament and unequivocal undertaking by nuclear weapon states to work towards complete elimination of nuclear weapons. Now these steps are essential for any workable plan one can possibly conceive for a positive movement towards nuclear disarmament. Moreover, these 13 practical steps are the only universally agreed and politically declared action plan for nuclear disarmament within the Non-Proliferation Treaty. But that is just that, a political commitment. We are approaching the end of 2017 and still no concrete steps by nuclear weapon states on nuclear disarmament have been taken. For the world to be serious about nuclear disarmament, security perceptions of nuclear weapon states must change. For nuclear disarmament to happen, nuclear deterrence needs to somehow be brought down from a pedestal that it currently rests on. For nuclear disarmament to be thought about seriously, interstate conflicts need to be resolved without resorting to the threat of the use of nuclear weapons. Nuclear disarmament requires leadership, and this leadership is going to come from the 5 NPT nuclear weapon states and not the non-NPT nuclear weapon states. The prospects are very low for such leadership, coming from the US, which has thousands of nuclear warheads on hand for their alert, has not even ratified the CDBV, spends trillions of dollars in modernizing their nuclear arsenal, and is hell-bent on teaching North Korea a lesson by showcasing all its military might. Now, how is it that the world adopted universal ban on biological weapons, chemical weapons, landmines, cluster bombs, but has failed to ban nuclear weapons that have killed a million people plus? Perhaps we can all think about it, but there are no easy answers out there. I would like to stop here and look forward to your questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rabia, for a very real quality presentation. Now, I call on Mr. Kamran Akhtar, the Director General for Disarmament and a colleague of mine for many years, who joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a career diplomat in 1995. Prior to that, he served in the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission. He was Director of Disarmament from 2005 to 10. He was Director General Science and Technology at the OIC. After that, he has been involved in a wide range of international negotiations on arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation issues. And he has been part of several bilateral dialogues, including Pakistan, India, nuclear, international CBN. And of course, he has served in our mission in Vienna and also has been in the disarmament division even before he was director. Sir, you have the floor, and I know that you have been suffering from a bad knee, so perhaps you would like to speak from here.
I'm sorry I won't be able to stand up because of the bad knee. I would first of all like to thank the CISS for inviting me to share my thoughts over here. And I feel humbled to be here because two of my mentors, Ambassador Anita and Ambassador Heather, and several scholars are here. I'm not a scholar in this field. What I am going to do is just to share some of my random thoughts as a practitioner. And those thoughts are my personal thoughts, and they do not reflect the policy of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. For that purpose, our foreign secretary was here this morning, and she has already shared the outline of our policy on this arms control and disarmament with you. So I don't have any written notes. I'll just be speaking from some of the points I just jotted down. My topic is integration of non-NPT states in the non-proliferation regime. I think the topic has been very wisely worded because it avoids the word order. It talks about regime. And I understand a lot of things have already been said about what is or what is not a nuclear order. This non-proliferation regime is comprised of various instruments which includes treaties, conventions, and other legal instruments and arrangements. In terms of the treaties, we have the Non-Proliferation Treaty, we have the CTBT, we have the Nuclear Weapon Free Zone treaties. In terms of other legal instruments, we have the UN Security Council resolution, the binding IAEA safeguards agreements, the additional protocols, and then there are arrangements like the Global Initiative to Combat Nuclear Terrorism, CISS, the Nuclear Security Summit process, and many others. So these instruments together, they define the non-proliferation regime. Whether we like it or not, at the heart of this regime is the NPT. Although we have our reservations with the treaty, if nuclear weapons are bad, then they are bad for everyone. There should be no sanctioned nuclear weapon states. However, the reality is that this treaty happens to be at the heart of the regime. And this treaty is in fact the one which decides which are the nuclear weapon states and which are the non-nuclear weapon states. Along with this treaty, we have the Nuclear Weapon Free Zone treaties, which again is following the stratification which has been defined in the NPT. Then we have conventions like the CTBT, which have not entered into force. Then there are proposals for a treaty banning the production of fissile material. I'll be talking about that later on. And finally, there are arrangements like the NSG. They are also important in terms of defining where each state is placed in the regime with regard to the others. Because the NSG decides how much access to nuclear technology any state will get. So in that term, in that framework, we have a number of states now. We have first category, which is the nuclear weapon states, the P5. Then we have a second category, which is non-nuclear weapon states, which are parties to the NPT. Then we have the third category, which is the non-NPT states, which is Pakistan, India, and Israel. We have yet another category of those states which one state which signed the NPT, but later on it walked away from the treaty, which is the DPRK. Then there are countries like Iran, which are parties to the NPT, yet there are special arrangements and some restrictions on their nuclear development programs because of the UN Security Council resolutions. So this is the placement of the states within the nuclear regime by virtue of the instruments which I have just mentioned. There are conventions on nuclear safety and security, IAEA codes of conduct on nuclear safety and security. They do determine a state's behavior in terms of its nuclear behavior and how responsible the state is behaving and how well it is managing its nuclear program. But the basic stratification is based on the NPT. Now, we see that in 2008, an exemption was made for India in the NSG guidelines. The NSG guidelines did not allow nuclear trade with any country which does not apply full scope safeguards on its civilian nuclear facilities or for that matter, or all its nuclear facilities and materials. This exemption allowed India to have access to nuclear material and technology at the international level, and thus it moved India a notch up in the regime. The reasons for the 2008 exemptions are well known. There were strategic and political reasons, and everyone knows what are those reasons, and I'm sure there has been a reference made to those reasons. There were commercial reasons as well. I recall in 2005 when US-India nuclear agreement was announced, Mr. Sri Raman, while writing in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, he projected that this deal would create 27,000 jobs per year, high-quality jobs per year for the next 10 years for the Americans. Besides that, they were expecting sales of around $200 billion to India in terms of nuclear technology. And then there was the expectation that low-end technologies being produced by India, they would be exported to US, thus resulting in the revival of the indigenous US nuclear industry. Indian case was based on 4 arguments. The Indians had a normative argument, they had an energy security argument, they have a climate change argument, and of course they had a commercial argument. They projected their supply capabilities, and they projected how their supply capabilities qualify them to be members of the NSG. Now, why I am focusing on the NSG? Given the treaties and conventions which constitute the non-proliferation regime, we see that the only way the non-NPT states can be mainstreamed is through membership of the NSG. Because realistically speaking, we should not expect the NPT to be amended now and accommodating the 3 non-NPT states. So the only way is to have these 3 states inside the NPT regime, give them a seat on the decision-making table where international rules regarding nuclear commerce are being made. So the Indians are now vying for the membership of the NSG based on those 4 arguments I've just mentioned. On the normative front, the Indians cited the measures they adopted subsequent to the 2005 Civil Nuclear Agreement with US. Those included separation of civilian and military nuclear facilities, an umbrella safeguards agreement for the civilian nuclear facilities, an additional protocol, and their commitment to support international negotiation on a fissile material treaty. Then they, of course, now have adhered to the NSG guidelines as well. So they have normatively taken a number of steps which they are projecting at the international level. In terms of their supply capabilities, I've just mentioned they've been projecting themselves as a state with advanced nuclear technology. Their energy security argument, has been one of the basis for the Americans supporting the civil nuclear agreement with India, and they have cited their energy needs for socio-economic development and how nuclear energy can provide them energy security. Again, the climate change argument they have been playing up. Till last year, India had